Hey everybody, happy Thursday, happy Thanksgiving if you're watching today, and welcome to my booth. I'm Jay. Today's sample's from David. As always, if you'd like me to review a sample of yours, there's a form in the description. It was brought to my attention that a few of the last ones didn't have this form in the description. That's been rectified, I hope, but let me know if that's not the case and you'd like to submit. And as always, if you like this stuff and you find it helpful, you can help me out by clicking the YouTube buttons. There are other ways to support the channel more directly, and these efforts in the description below if that's something you're keen on. Anywho, let's get to it. This is a really nice audiobook sample, so I'm excited to give it another listen here.
It was 2:13 a.m. when the knock echoed through the empty hallway of his apartment. Detective Miller snapped upright in his chair, the coffee-stained report slipping to the floor. He blinked again, trying to dismiss it as a trick of his fatigued mind. But then it came again. 3 deliberate knocks, slow and measured.
Okay, cool. Pausing really quick to say a couple things. Firstly, you got a great voice, my friend. I think it really lends itself to this type of material, your just vocal quality in general. So awesome, A. The other thing I'll say is your pacing is pretty darn good. I dig it a lot. Cut and print in terms of that as far as I'm concerned. You were curious a bit about processing and stuff like that. I'll touch on that more so at the end. What was I going to say? As we go through more of this, I would love to... Anyway, I'll start with that and then we'll keep going.
3 deliberate knocks, slow and measured. He stood, the floorboards creaking beneath his weight. In his line of work, a late-night visitor rarely brought good news. Miller reached for his gun, the cold steel reassuring in his hand, and he approached the door. He peered through the peephole, but saw only darkness.
Okay, so the thing was going to get at, but I think it's a good place to mention it now, your voice lends itself to this material really, really well, and it does a lot of the work for you, as does your pacing. It sets up a really nice atmosphere, but I think we can go further. And a couple things that'll set that up in a huge way really, really quickly and easily is because this is following this detective's point of view very, very closely. It's sort of a third-person close perspective where basically over his shoulder, he's clearly the main character, though it's not narrated in first person. So it's not like I grab my gun and it's cold steel is reassuring in my hand. It's third person, but we're still right on his shoulder for this. So what that gives us license to do in stories like this is take on a bit of his emotional context in the way we choose to narrate. So in moments like...
But then it came again.
Where you say it that way, the confusion there is really, really great. I hear this knock, but then it came again. That's unusual, and we get that in your performance. But this sort of tone that you do really well here...
But then it came again.
I think could be used more so in the rest of your narration here, and that'll just make it even better. So as we go through this...
3 deliberate knocks, slow and measured.
So but then it came again. 3 deliberate knocks, and be puzzling it out there instead of merely describing the action that's going on. And it doesn't mean you have to do much, because the subtlety with, but then it came again is enough, I think. You could maybe go a little bit further, but then keep puzzling out. There are 3 knocks, slow and measured. What does this mean? And then...
He stood, the floorboards creaking beneath his weight.
Here we can start to get the ominous nature of it, the anxiety of...
In his line of work, a late-night visitor rarely brought good news.
What does that mean? What does it mean that it's not good news? Is it when somebody comes and knocks on the door that they're saying, hey, dude, there's traffic on the freeway on the way home. You might want to get out. Is it that kind of bad news? Or is it somebody on the other side of the door potentially going to cause him harm, potentially going to kill him? Is this his last moment alive? Is this a threat to him? And then we find out here.
Miller reached for his gun, the cold steel reassuring in his hand.
So it's enough for him to warrant grabbing his weapon. And in that sense, we can lead our listener through this detective's experience from there are 3 knocks at the door. I got to stand up for this. The floorboards creak. Maybe that's a little bit nerve-wracking. Usually when someone knocks on my door this late, on his door this late, because we're in third person, it's rarely good news. So maybe it's just a precaution that he grabs his weapon. Maybe it's something that he always does. Maybe this is so unusual that he has to do this now at this point. Or maybe there's something going on in the circumstances of this story at this point that it warrants this amount of caution and unease. But my point is, you can lend all of the stuff that I just described to your performance by attaching yourself to the detective's point of view, and that'll really amp up my investment in the story. Because right now it's pretty observational detached, which is fine. It works just fine and well for this, but we want to go for more than just fine, in my opinion. And I think by doing just a little bit of that, it'll take us in a really, really great direction.
He peered through the peephole, but saw only darkness. His pulse quickened. He took a steadying breath, unlocked the door, and opened it a crack. The hallway was empty.
Okay, so here he peeps through the door. We've got this whole beautiful opportunity to build tension where he peeps through and there's nothing there. Is the person on that side of the door? Are they on that side of the door? Are they below the door? Are they gone? I don't know. I open the door a crack. We wait for a gunshot or a knife to come out of the darkness or something sinister. And then no one's there. So you can build up the tension from he stood. There's a creak under the floor. Usually this doesn't mean it's something good. I grab my weapon. It builds and builds and builds and builds until no one was there. And we all collectively breathe a sigh of relief, or maybe we continue on into a bit of confusion and unease, and the puzzle just continues.
His pulse quickened. He took a steadying breath, unlocked the door, and opened it a crack. The hallway was empty. Silence pressed in, broken only by the distant hum of the city beyond.
So there, too, silence pressed in, broken only by the hum of the city beyond. Because he's listening. When you hear, at least in my experience, like when I wake up in the morning and I'm trying not to wake anybody up as I'm creeping around the house, there's that sort of like thumping in your head as the blood is something in your ears that you can hear really, really well. You hear that, and then as you start to expand beyond yourself, you hear the hum of the city as you're listening for any clues as to where this person went and if it's a threat or not, as in terms of the detective. And you can use that sort of description in your performance.
Then he noticed it. A single red envelope lying just outside his door. His name scrawled in bold black ink.
So the pacing here of then he noticed it. We still have that question mark hanging. There's no relief yet. We don't know what it is. And we could play it a couple different ways. We could play it with relief at the end of this passage. The envelope, a little bit of a breath of relief with his name on it. And then the mystery continues. Or perhaps that keeps the tension, and then he saw it. There was the envelope with his name scrawled on top, and we can maintain the tension through. That would just be a directorial choice based off of how you want to play it, I think, or the context of the book, but that would be a lot of options. So again, just to summarize all of my notes to you for this passage, really great pacing, really great tone of voice, really good grasp of the pacing of the story in general and how that should and can play out to really great effect by adding more emotional tension, attaching ourselves to the point of view of the detective, letting his emotional state bleed into our own as we narrate will really amp up your performance here and really allow me to invest a lot more. And then playing with the tension as the story goes through, in this passage in particular, where we get the knock, the question, the danger, the gun, the moving to the door, the looking through the peephole, nothing, open the door, nothing, out into the, and using that sort of dance of tension and hope of relief and suspension and stuff. A lot of big words that mean, random stuff, but I hope it makes sense what I'm saying. So yeah. Then in terms of your processing, just to touch on that briefly, overall, I think your processing is pretty good. I do think that your compression is maybe a little bit heavy. Let's give it a quick listen and I'll break it down a little bit.
It was 2:13 a.m. when the knock echoed through the empty hallway of his apartment.
So one of the things that clues me into it being pretty heavy compression, if I pull open my live compressor here, if I really crank this down and turn it up, you notice that my voice gets sort of that like radio broadcasty sound where a lot of things start being crunched together. So this is me being pretty heavily compressed. And then this is me with no compression. There's just a difference in tone. And I'm not saying that you're that heavy, but I'll do a quick A/B again. Here I am really heavily compressed, really, this is too much in all regards, and it just crunches my sound in a lot of ways. You hear my breaths are really loud, which isn't something that you're suffering from in this recording, but it makes my sound like this, and then this is me not compressed at all. This is just my natural speaking voice. One more time. This is me very, very compressed and sounding like this. And this is me not compressed. Just to give you a bit of an A/B comparison. And if you dial it back just ever so slightly, you'll get a little bit less of a crunch, perhaps. Now, of course, in audiobooks, they get very specific about the Anyway, I'm getting in the weeds there a little bit too much. If you have more questions about it, let me know. But that's kind of what I mean by dial it back. You can pull your threshold up, so say from minus 12 dB to minus 7 dB or whatever that setting is. You could also dial your ratio down. If it's set at 4:1, maybe do 2:1 or 2.5:1. Both of those things will help make it sound more natural. I don't think your compression is bad. I think you can just dial it back and that'll improve it ever so slightly.
Detective Miller snapped upright in his chair, the coffee-stained report slipping to the floor. He blinked again, trying to dismiss it as a trick of his fatigued mind. But then it came again. 3 deliberate knocks, slow and measured. He stood, the floorboards creaking beneath his weight. In his line of work, a late-night visitor rarely brought good news.
Yeah, that's really my only big note is I would play around with a little bit less compression and see what that sound is like. Just because I suspect it may be... Anyway, I've said enough on that front. Play with it and see if you like A or B more. If you want a more natural sound, then I think dialing it back would be... it would do you a little bit of favors in that respect. Anyway, all to say, David, really solid work. Let us know where we can, I always say this, but I'm always genuinely curious and interested, but let us know where we can find this in the description below. For everybody else, I hope this was helpful for you. And again, if you like this stuff and you find it helpful, you can help me out by clicking them buttons down there. And you can support the channel in other ways. Check out the description for those. I won't go into too many details now with my voice, but thanks for being here. Until the next one of these, and have a happy Thanksgiving. Be well. Toodles.